All right, Cody, you ready? Let's go for a walk. Come on. Let's go. Get going. Oh, another day, not today. Well, here we are, daily routine. Usually take the dog out twice a day, do his business. Fortunately for me, it's a little chilly out and the snow's heading away. Come on, Koda. Usually lots of wildlife out this time of year and this crisp afternoon, but usually we'll find out when the dog finds out. He's a pretty good sniffing dog. Koda, go have a look. Go on. Go on. Koda, my dog here, he's a small Munsterlander, so he's quite the dog. He's originally a German dog, but made its way over here to Canada, and although not very popular yet, he's quite the hunter and also quite the house dog. And as you can see, he's doing his business, so we'll leave him for a minute. Where he got to, as I was mentioning, he's quite the hunter. He's a pointer, and he's also really good at tracking, and he can also retrieve. So he's called a versatile hunting dog. Koda, oh, I don't know if you guys can see there, the grouse just took off, and normally that's how it goes when we're out and about. The grouse around here in central Ontario, the ruffed grouse, they're really elusive. They're really good at hiding in the bush, and actually I hunt for them quite a bit, and although it's not hunting season per se for me, they hide out in the trees, and they'll actually let me walk by them, and assuming that I didn't have the dog, they would have just stayed right there. So that dog, he's really good at pointing them out for me. But beautiful dog here, Koda. He's as I mentioned, a German dog. Came over, or started in Munster, Germany, and then made his way to Canada. And doesn't bark very much, and quite a good dog. So as you can see now, he knows that the bird was there. He paused briefly, but because ruffed grouse, they don't hold very tight, meaning they tend to spook quite easily. He didn't get a chance to fully point. When we're actually hunting, he tends to know it, and he'll hold the point, and up until I say so, and then he takes off, and he'll flush the grouse, as we say. But that's neat to see. It's neat to see the ruffed grouse out and about. It's a pretty good habitat here for them. And days like today, where it's nice and crisp, They're probably out getting a little bit of sun energy and enjoying the day, because the inevitable is coming, a few more months of winter. But anyways, a little more on the dog here. Koda, he's well, as I was mentioning, Koda, he's a small Munsterlander, so he's a quite good hunter. He's also a really good family dog and real good around the house. He doesn't bark too much and definitely only asks a few things, right, boy? Only likes 2 walks a day, likes the odd treat, and yeah, definitely likes to get out hunting. It's one of those things, people who have hunting dogs, they don't realize, but you're not forcing them to go out hunting. This dog here, he's all over going out in the bush, and as you can see, he's quite the character. Koda, what you doing? Yeah, that's about right. Just loving the winter. Usually this is a good temperature for him. We're getting a little too cold because what happens with him especially is the temperature gets real cold and his paws start to freeze, and I got to get the boots on him. But anyways, right now it's pretty good for him. A little chilly for me, but good for him. So this is the typical loop. We'll go out. Got some acreage here. We'll go out and do a few laps, depending where we end up, depending on what we see. We go one way or the other. He's always out and exploring, especially in the spruce here. The spruce tend to hold the rough grouse, and he loves the rough grouse. And this area too also has the hare, the rabbits, and they're one of the things that he was bred for back in the day, back in Germany. So he'll go through there and see what's kicking around. But this area here is sort of a meadow. This used to be a farm, believe it or not, and it's been grown in over time. This area didn't have any actual farming going on, but a bit further you'll see a red pine plantation. This area was more or less just left how it is. So there's some tall grasses and some small trees coming up, but a lot of deciduous trees are trying to make their way through. You see these poplars right here in front of you. They're trying to make their way through with the openness, and lots of white pine in there and spruce mixed in and out. Another day in time, I'll show you in the bush a bit further. We've got, just through that opening, we've got what I call the hillbilly half mile, and I won't tell you what that is yet, but it's pretty cool. So yeah, Koda heading into the spruce again. If I don't give him any direction, he goes out exploring on his own, and one of those dogs you never really need to have a leash on, because he's a people person, so he'll come back, that's for sure. He could definitely run away here if he wanted, but he always comes back. And as you can see, he sort of gets birdie, as I like to call it sometimes, especially if he gets onto some scent. And the real trouble starts when you hear him stop. That's when you know he's probably starting to point. And the good thing with him, he won't go after the bird, so he's not going to try to catch it. He's going to want to point. So anyways, depending on the time the bird was there and everything else, sometimes he's got old scent he gets onto, and he still goes and checks it out regardless. Anyways, making our way out of what I call the meadow area. This area I call the spring. We start heading down towards a bit of a creek here, and you'll notice that we've got a spring that runs under the trail. The spring's kind of neat because it feeds the big ponds that are on the property. Oh, here he comes. Oh, this is Koda's drinking hole. And down here you'll also find, it's kind of interesting because as you look around, you see all kinds of cherry trees. They're sort of mixed in here with a bunch of the spruce, and there's some fir in here as well. But you can see there's a lot of blowdown in this area, especially. I think we've had some big winds over the years, and we've lost a number of the spruce trees. They tend to be kind of flimsy, and they break right off. But anyways, you can see Koda down there getting a drink of the spring. So the spring here goes under this trail and then starts up here on the right. So you can see it's quite cold out. This should be frozen, but there's moving water here. So the spring rolls off the highlands, makes its way down under the trail, ultimately meanders down near into the ponds. But good spot for Koda. I don't know what he's doing. He probably found a little opening in there. But it's also a good spot for grouse. I find they like to hang out anywhere there's the water, and depending on the types of trees, they'll be after the buds on the some of the deciduous trees. But yeah, it just depends on the time of year when you'll see them. One thing I saw down here recently was the dog and I were having a drink here, and I looked to the left, and sure enough, dog took off and there was a fisher. So the fishers are definitely in the area. Luckily the dog sort of left it alone. Hate for the fisher to get involved with the dog, that's for sure. So anyways, going up here, you'll see we got a whole bunch of old mature white pines. So I'd imagine some of these doozies are pretty old. You can see they're big ones. So got some nice white pines in here. Hopefully they hang around for another 100 years. But just got to be careful. As you can see, I put this branch on this one. I didn't put the nail in that tree, but somewhere along the line someone did. And with the sawmill, you're going to see here, you get that sucker in the sawmill, you'll know it. So, and a few dead ones. As you can see, the critters have been eating this thing like it's going out of style. This one hopefully doesn't fall anytime soon because it looks like it's a crippler. Anyways, dog's kind of spoiled rotten here. It's got about 40 acres, give or take, to find his way. Lots of trails around here. I got some that are for the winter only. So this one on the left here sort of meanders down in the lowlands and across a few creeks and that. It's got some time spent on it recently. I put in a bridge on this one. It needs the snow though. We got to get a base packed down because the trail's kind of sketchy. So no, making our way into the red pine plantation here. So believe it or not, I think it was about 35 years ago. This used to be a pasture. I think I heard there was sheep back here or something. But this used to be a pasture, and now there's, several thousand red pine. So the red pine are great. They're really good for the lumber and the mill you're about to see. But the trouble with them is they're not very diverse. They don't have a lot of different species that live in them. So some of the things I'm doing with this forest, this is actually a managed forest. So the forester came in and worked with me, and we developed a plan. My goal, hopefully, with this forest is to bring it back to a mixed forest. Lots of hardwood, lots of softwood. Bring back the diversity and the species that live here. In order to do so, I got some thinning coming on. So I started thinning already, and that's why there's a bunch of trees leaning, because being a dense forest like this that hasn't been thinned before, the trees don't tend to hit the ground. So got to get in here. That's why I'm fixing the winch, trying to get the winch on the ATV fixed so I can get in here and get pulling them down to the ground. But yeah, so that's those. I'm just cutting out basically 5 inches and smaller, trying to make room for the larger ones. Yeah, so lots of cleanup, and as you can see, there's red pine as far as the eye can see. So trying to do it in a way where I don't damage the ground, because I've got some young deciduous trees that tend to pop up here and there, and I'd like those to get a good start so that when I clear, or thin rather, they get more sunlight, and ultimately they're a step ahead in terms of growing. So yeah, another trail here. Koda's off down it. Not sure where he got to, but you can see the red pine that are in here. There's tons of them. There's some good ones, but for the most part, they're starting to get squeezed out. Usually when red pine are planted, they're planted, 4 to 5 feet apart. You can see by all these in here. These are a bit more spread out, but for the most part, 4 to 5 feet apart is how they were planted. And that's great. Gives them basically a good start. It allows for no branches to actually form down low. So you'll notice these don't have low-lying branches. It's because they're planted close together. And as a result, the lack of sunlight will promote upward growth as opposed to outward growth. And the nature of the trees, they tend to grow upwards more so than outwards. But 4 to 5 feet apart won't cut it, because you're now cutting off sunlight. You're creating competition amongst the different trees for resources, and the trees are probably going to basically just stick to a real small size. So I got to get in here, thin them out, so I can have fewer trees, but greater diameter trees. And at the same time, that'll boost diversity in here. I'll start to get some nice hardwoods coming through like these. Up till now, most of the hardwoods that have been grown, they tend to grow where it's along a trail or where it's a bit more open. So they got the most sunlight and less competition for nutrients and all that other stuff. So anyways, big job ahead of me here. I figure, yeah, hopefully before I'm dead, I'll get this done. See where that dog got to. Oh, here he comes. Come on. Well, we're coming up on a new endeavor, and this sort of happened in the last year or two. Actually, last year. Had all this red pine sitting around here, and I thought, I'm a big woodworker and I like sawing, and so let's make a go of sawing my own lumber. So I made this contraption, or this little shack to start. I built this before I got the sawmill, and this is what I call the hillbilly hideout. I'm not using it right at the moment. It's so cold out and all the wood's frozen that I just sort of put it on hold until the spring rolls around. But this is where it's at for making lumber. So I got some red pine right off the bat and built this structure and built some bunks here in front of me. I actually use a tractor to load logs that I cut in this forest. I load them onto the bunks, and the bunks are slightly higher than the base for the sawmill, which is perfect. I have got these are probably frozen just like everything else in Canada this time of year. I got these little ramps here, and basically once I get logs loaded up on my right, these aren't the logs I'm talking, these are slabs that have been cut, but once I get the logs loaded up on the right, I can then just use gravity to roll them down onto the actual platform for the sawmill. So anyways, comfortable in here once I get cutting. Got a nice view, nice breeze through here. Yeah, this Woodland Mills, this is the HM130. I'll do a review on this at some point, but nice unit, real nice unit. 14 horse engine, can cut up to a 30-inch log. Pretty user friendly. Water in the top, fuel in the bottom. Make sure you got a sharp blade on there, and away you go. So bit of a learning curve with this unit, but for the most part, it's been a really great unit. And I've actually cut. Well, I've probably cut. Well, I cut enough to build a barn this year. The barn's over 900 square feet, so this thing is a good unit. Anyways, we'll leave that for now, but that's the hillbilly hideout. It's actually hiding out from the winter right now. And these days I'll get up there and make sure that roof's going to be all right. It should be. We haven't had all that much snow thus far this winter, but good spot to hang out except for bug season. And also you can make some pretty good stuff out of it. Aside from making dimensional lumber, I usually cut the odd piece of live edge material depending on what I have laying around. This was a red pine I had to take down, so cut some nice live edge slabs. We'll make it into something. And there's the dog waiting for me. So we got some elevation this property here. We got pretty much a highland area where we got some mixed forest, and then all the way down to the lowland where we got a little creek, well, several creeks that run into a larger pond. But it's a nice property. The only trouble is red pine forests like this, they're not really conducive to a big variety of species. And I want species here. I want to see the deer and the turkeys and the grouse and marten and all that. So in order to get them here, got to get the diversity back. So to get the diversity back, I got to do some proper forest management. And unfortunately for me, this property could be a full-time job, but I actually have a full-time job, so any of this chainsawing and everything else is secondary. And so when I get to it, I get to it. And at this rate, as I said, I'm probably looking at the rest of my life trying to get this forest in shape. You can see just looking in this bush here, you got the odd good tree right on the outside. Most sunlight, most nutrients, less competition. And then you go in a bit further and you're getting a bunch of trees that are, 3, 4, 5 inches in diameter. And they'll stay that way. They'll eventually just get pushed out competed by the other trees. So the goal is to get in here and get them cleaned out. I'm not sure what I'll do with them, but maybe I'll cut them in half on the mill and make some rustic siding or something. I don't know. We'll do something with them. Koda's waiting to see where we're going. Let's go down here. All the tops of some of these trees, I've been meaning to get them cleaned up. I just haven't got around to it. Come on. So you can start to see on the left here the elevation starting to go up. So we got real sandy soil here. Red pine like the sand. And heading up on the left, we got lots of rocks here, and we're starting to get into some of the deciduous mixed forest. So we're getting some nice oaks up in there, and maple, and what else we got up there? Got the odd spruce tree up in there, some softwood. But yeah, as I said, this was a pasture about 35 years ago. And just an interesting tip, if you're ever trying to figure out how old a red pine tree is, you find a good example here. Oh, look at this big one right here. If you're ever trying to figure out how old a red pine forest is, or a red pine tree, you can basically count. So if you look at this tree, this would have been a branch. So you can see they sort of grow in a ring. That would have been a set of branches. That would have been a set of branches. Another set, another set, another set, another set. Basically every set of branches, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., represents approximately 1 year of growth. So if you want to know how old this tree is, you count the number of rings of branches, and it's anywhere on this tree from about 30 to 35 rings all the way to the top. So you can sort of figure that out that way. If there's some other ways out there other than cutting the tree down and counting the growth rings, you let me know. But as far as I know, that seems to be about the best way. And you can see on this tree here, get all these branches out of here. Got the nice hardwood coming in right beside the softwood. So this would be a prime example of a tree that I would want to take out carefully so that the hardwood tree there can continue to take off. You can also tell a plantation, if you were to look down on the right side here, you can see they're perfect rows. Last time I checked, trees don't grow naturally in perfect rows. So up until recently, when equipment advancements have started getting better, you would just have a machine come in. It would take out usually every third row in a thinning like this. But yeah, I'm gonna do selective harvest because I don't want to ruin the aesthetics. I want to make sure that the forest looks as natural as it can. And if you take out every third row, to me, it's going to start to look a little, less natural. Yeah, forgive my heavy breathing here. I've got about 5 layers of clothes on, heavy boots, and it feels like it's negative 15 out. Here's another devil of the bush, buckthorn. See the buckthorn? You can always tell it's buckthorn. You end up looking at the end of it. See that point? This is a really small one because I probably cut most of the other stuff out of here. But this one, when the thorns get bigger, they're a real treat to find in the back of your leg. So anyways, you can see here, we're starting to go into the highlands. So I've cut a bunch of red pines from this sort of row here. I've used a bunch of that for lumber already. The goal here is to sort of allow the hardwoods to move down into the red pine forest, sort of intermingle here. And so in order to do that, I started taking out some of the big trees that were shading the underlying hardwoods. But elevation change here, lots of rock here. Real beautiful when the snow's away. You see lots of moss in the trees. And some white pines in here, some red pines still, some spruce. See up there, we got some, what's that up there, a big hard maple or big oak? Can't quite see. But a bit further down, you got some nice birch. That stuff starts to progress and make its way into the red pine forest. Ready, Koda? Come on. Nice ones in here.